A reading from the Gospel according to John. Pilate therefore said to him, "Art thou a king then?" Jesus answered, "Thou sayest, I am a king. For this was I born, and for this I came into the world, that I should give testimony to the truth. Every one that is of the truth heareth my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" When he said this, he went out again to the Jews and saith to them, "I find no cause in him." It's hard to be jokey today.
Yeah, it is.
So we pray first for all those in the Holy Land who have died. We pray for those who are looking for information about what is going on, those who missed loved ones, those who are worried about what has happened to their children and grandparents. And we pray this evening for wisdom in seeking the truth and thinking about why the stories took place in the Holy Land that did, and what that can help us understand about what's happening now. Through our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, it's we live in topical times, I think is fair to say.
Yeah. The topic of our times. Yeah.
Well, and of all time. I mean,
yes.
This is, I think, so if at any moment Christians need to be better at explaining why we are Christians, this really is it. Interestingly, since the conflict directly that's happening right now in the Holy Land is not between Christians and anybody else, but between Jews and Muslims. And Christians being told we must take sides in particular ways, and that's a little bit of a challenge politically and socially and spiritually. So my prayer group that meets on campus, we prayed on Monday for everyone, because we are clearly in a moment of darkness. And a continuing darkness. I mean, humor is all gallows humor at this point, and praying for the innocents massacred by Herod. Wait, in the womb? No, wait. The moment and the atrocities now, it's the string of yet another. Like, I mean, you have been quite powerfully arguing on your channel, saying, at what point do we believe what is being told to us by the scientists and the authorities when they've been lying to us for years now? murdering their own people, and occasionally, I think one of the politicians in Alberta at the moment was apologizing for forcing the unvaccinated to resign or something.
Yes. Yeah. The long-awaited apology from somebody in authority to acknowledge what had been going on.
Right.
Yeah. Which was a trickle in the ocean in terms of the news cycle this week. I've been loud. I've been very loud because we're being baited to be reflexively tribal, and I don't want to play that game. And oddly, even people that are professed Orthodox Christians seem to have a problem with understanding the way that the tribal dynamics are created, and how scientific racism, how Darwinism has bolstered existing tribal tensions. And so, yeah, I've been, as you've seen, from the wings, trying to talk about it, because I can't take sides in this conflict as a Christian, and also because I know people that are Palestinian and Israelis that are good friends of mine. So when things like this happen anywhere in the world, and you have friends on both sides, you can't pick. You can't pick, because you see, at least from the vantage point that I've been blessed with, you see how both sides are propagandized to hate the other. It's a process of dehumanization in order to get people to
act like animals.
Yeah.
No, obviously, I think I live in the neighborhood that I do, and of course, you've seen me on my own social media get quite frustrated with people trying to make me take sides against my own neighbors.
Yes.
Saying, well, you know what it's like, they're on the south side of Chicago. And it's like, yes, I do. They're human beings. What are you talking about? And the specifically the meme about who is that guy, the old man who's like, I'm giving up being an expert now on Ukraine and going to be now an expert on Palestine. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, here we go again. Okay, so I actually saw John Mearsheimer on the way into campus this morning. I said, how does it feel to be in the spotlight? He's saying he was walking his dog. And he was like, I'm trying very hard not to be. Mearsheimer being my University of Chicago colleague, who has his videos about Ukraine have now, become YouTube sensations, right, in the millions and millions of views. But he gets to pass out of the spotlight now. And my former colleague from my department, but now who's been at Columbia for quite a while now, Rashid Khalidi. I know him from when he was in the department with, my colleague Peter Novick, whom we've talked about with his Holocaust book. Interesting. It's like I had Peter Novick writing the book on the Holocaust in American life, and Rashid writing his books on what Palestine has been subjected to for the last 100 years. And I was looking up some of what Rashid had been saying. Not recently. I couldn't find anything that he commented on this weekend, but did find interviews from some time ago where he was saying that the people in Gaza are trapped in a horrific situation that is, they're pawns as far as I can tell. I mean, you posted quite well on your channel saying, this is something I've never understood. If they're Muslim, why aren't they allowed to be refugees somewhere else? Why are they trapped in the way that they are? And I think I understand passively that somehow they've not been welcomed into the surrounding countries. Whereas, you think about how many refugees we've had flooding into Europe from everywhere else. It's like, why are the Palestinians still there? But then you say, well, but that's their home. They should be there. They should be allowed to be there. And, and then my mind just collapses. I mean, these are injustices that seem to cycle perpetually, generation to generation to generation, the blood forever. And
Yeah.
oh yes, the British started it with the Balfour Declaration. Let's be frank.
Yeah. 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 This is a symptom of bad British imperial policy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the British, of course, are doing it because they want to one up on the Ottomans. Although, ironically, as we've been talking about in our writing for Draco Alchemicus, we're meditating on medicine right now, and one of the things we were meditating on is smallpox, technically variolation rather than inoculation, and that, oh yes, where did the English learn how to do smallpox variolation? Oh, from the Ottomans.
Mm-hmm.
In the 18th century, when Lady Mary Wortley Montagu visits there and says, "Oh, these Muslims, they have enlightened policies so that their women are able to have affairs all the time." She read their being veiled as a way to like sneak around on their husbands, and learned about smallpox variolation while she was there, and had her 4-year-old son. And it's not inoculation; it's a different technique, but and then brought the practice back to at that point the United Kingdom, and she's now heralded as this great innovator in medicine, precisely because of a treatment she bought from the Ottoman Empire. But then fast forward 200 years, and you have the British desperately trying to provoke the situation against the Ottomans, and of course World War I. Destroying the empire.
And then it leaves this I don't even know if you'd call it a bonfire situation. I mean, it's difficult because Christians in the West don't consider that region to be the home of ancient Christian churches. First off, I think this is a part of the problem. The Israel versus Palestine situation, it recalls Jews versus Muslims and Muslims versus Jews. And then in the middle of all of this, we have these very ancient Christian communities that have been trying to negotiate their way through all of these ongoing wars.
Right.
Ongoing settlements and the skirmishes that are happening with all of the settlements so Christendom is caught up in all of this as well. It's very difficult. I mean, I'm just thinking, like, in terms of what's been happening this week, and touching on the Draco Alchemicus themes that we've been working on. We have the smallpox from the Ottomans now. We saw footage of hovercrafting, paragliding, supposedly Hamas fighters coming into a rave situation. It's an eerie kind of it's an eerie image of what we've been discussing. And I've been thinking about it a lot because I was at those kinds of parties for a long time with people from Israel who were dodging the draft, or people that had served and decided to leave. And whatever anyone can say about the degenerate youth at those parties, that I've seen the comments online. This is quite normal in terms of the how can I put this? This is a cultural expression for people which have decided not to participate in an Orthodox Jewish practice. So all of those people were out in the field on Shabbat. This is at the end of Sukkot, so it was quite a significant holiday. And there was one rabbi who said, they should have been in the synagogue celebrating Simchat Torah, but they're out there underneath the giant Buddha statue. The thing is, the conversation has been, they should be in the synagogues instead. But, as Christians, we think, well, I mean, I see it for myself because I know Israelis that have been in that dance scene. It's a difficult thing. You're choosing between a very rigid rabbinical interpretation of the religion versus this kind of ecstatic, do whatever you want kind of behavior. but there's a lot of trauma there too. These are young people which are raised to go into national service and to be they're raised to be told that they are going to need to be able to kill people in the immediate vicinity of their neighborhoods eventually. So, I mean, this is just the reality for those young people, and I mean, it's like people can see the bacchanalian aspect to the rave, but also I see a lot of people that are trying to transcend a situation which they have no, which they've not realized there is another avenue of transcendence to take, to leave this binary of conflict between them and their neighbors. So yeah, sorry to rant, but I'm not taking sides with either of the players in this war, but I can see very clearly how people are pushed into a kind of frenzy which would draw them into either the hedonism or the militarism. You know, that's the binary, really. That they're kind of, that's what I saw on the footage. You know, if you're not patriotic and you're not doing your duty and you should be doing this, why are you out partying? And you know, of course you deserved it then because you were out there underneath these statues. What's the other option? Well, you know, it's running off and putting on your uniform and weaponizing yourself for the agendas of people which really don't care about you. That's what I've been trying to talk about.
Well, as you're talking, I would say we planned last week to carry on talking about Jesus Christ Superstar this week. So having the events of Saturday in mind, it's very interesting that what you described is, of course, what's in the movie. We'll go back to the images that we had. It's the same ones. I have Jesus being pulled by the Roman soldiers, but you're talking about, here we are at the Last Supper, right? I mean, it's a binary that the movie shows. Here that we had the Palm Sunday. There they go, the Palm Sunday, you know, rave, as it were. And we talked last time about how the cast in the actual movie were mainly atheist hippies, apparently, right, according to the lore that I picked up from Wikipedia. But I mean, you could that's the way they filmed it, and the music fits with it. It's like they're in some kind of party, Hosanna, Hosanna, and then the context is this militarized occupation, which, I mean, the movie's made in 1973. I mean, we can be a little bit freaked out about how we like are framing this past weekend by accident with a movie made 50 years ago showing exactly this, what you just described. It's the sort of giddiness which they included in the movie of things like the tanks and the planes or the helicopters. There are helicopters in the movie, right? I can't remember. There's the Judas. Yes. Judas has the tanks,
jets,
the jets.
Yeah.
As against the sort of flower children depiction of the Palm Sunday. That being, well, you know, in my country, it's still around the Vietnam War and those protests. I'm realizing I'm not quite clear exactly what's going on in England at the time, but these are all American actors, so my country's situation is relevant. And as you're describing, it's like saying, okay, so your choice is this, you know, hedonistic love feast, or the army.
Yeah, that's what it's like for Israelis. So, you know, I mean, they rave, like they party hard. I mean, they're intense people. I really like Israelis. Unpopular opinion to say this at this time, probably, especially in these circles on these channels. But They tell you what they think.
Mm.
They're straight up. They're tough people. They have there's some beautiful qualities when you see these young people that are pushed into choosing between this kind of thing. It's a real choice. They have to. I mean, other countries have national service, sure, but other countries don't have national service where it's such an obvious life or death decision, and it comes with the consequences of being the tokens of massive geopolitical giants. So
Right.
whatever decision they make is judged by their own country, but they're judged by everybody just because of the decisions they're making. And so you can see it. So that's what you can see, the intensity that they have at that time of life, and that's what we saw. And they were traveling for 20 years all around the world, running these massive parties, which became things like the Burning Man Festival.
So, but the Burning Man is say, I had not heard this before, and you were just mentioning it. So is Burning Man started by Israelis directly, or is this saying it's part of the larger phenomenon of these kinds of parties?
It's part from my knowledge, I don't think Burning Man is an Israeli institution, but it's definitely part of the same phenomenon, because all of these parties started out in Goa in South India, which was Portuguese territory. And so they did the 60s flower child thing, but it was just an upgraded version, so the love feast, they run off, or they do the hippie thing in India, and then start all these trans parties, and then it just becomes a global phenomenon for a very long time. You'd see people dodging the draft, and they'd be traveling all over the world just following the party circuit. So it's that, or you're in the army, but it's not like the army reserves in Australia, where we've never had a local conflict. You can join the army reserves in Australia, and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure no one's ever going to call us up for army service.
Don't be so sure. You may get to join the.
Well,
depending on how that vote goes problem that you all are talking about right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's pretend that's not happening.
We'll talk about. Well, we probably do need to do an episode on all of that to explain everything for. Yes, but okay. Not tonight.
No, not tonight. No. But yeah, I mean, it's that. It's you're partying, or you're in the national service for Israel. So that's real active duty. And they nailed it. Jesus Christ Superstar nailed it visually. It's a rave in the desert versus the tanks. You put on the uniform. What do you choose?
I mean, it is telling that was 50 years ago. So we are so much. This is one of the interesting things that when I was younger, I had a hard time understanding, studying history, how, for example, with the Crusades, which we'll talk about, that you could have a movement, a sort of, phenomenon carry on so long, right? The first crusade goes out in 1096. Crusading as a sort of fervor, continues for like 2 centuries. And it was hard for me to understand when I was younger. It's like, why would people keep doing it? Why wouldn't there be this sort of character to a whole era that could last 150, 200 years? And I'm starting to appreciate it better now. These things I'm thinking, as you're describing the people your age, though, it's like I'm usually thinking of, and I think the leadership is usually talking in terms of the ones who were there in 1948, right? They're very, very old now. Or the founding generations. Maybe they were young in 1948 and now they're in charge now. And for them, it's just, it's the same thing that was happening in 1948 forever. But I'm not getting that sense from what you're saying, that's quite the way the people who've grown up since 1948 feel it. I mean, it's like there wasn't a time before 1948 for them. They were simply it was the always time.
Yes. No, there's a drawing on my foggy memories.
Why were your memories foggy?
Well, have you ever raved with an Israeli before? There's not a lot to remember.
This could be why stories are so confused about what happened on Saturday.
No, I mean, like, it's a difficult thing because I mean, it's a different time. Like 1948, you've got a bunch of people that are going in there, and they have a particular kind of cultural genesis. The generation that are going there, I mean, this is after World War II. They're going into this territory. They're essentially like starting from scratch. These people set up all of these kibbutz, you know, these farming communities and whatever, and they're all doing their little hippie thing, and they start up these communities, and that's like how they get off the ground. Now it's different. Now there's baggage, and there's like generations of baggage, and a completely secular culture. I mean, like, I mean, it's hard to describe. Like, most people, like, that are in Israel, they're not God-fearing. They're not religious. There's no sense that there's like a religious duty to be in Israel. I mean, this is like
that I'm sure most
very
half our audience just freaked out at that. Isn't that the whole point?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because
I mean, certainly it's a point. So I've been seeing emails and such like that coming across to say from evangelical Christians saying we must support our elder brethren in the Holy Land, which seems to suggest that it has a religious point.
I think that's only for Americans. I mean, I'm just thinking of the best example I have in mind, and no, there's no religious. I mean, there's no religious sense there. I mean, it's nationalistic, but it's not. The rooster's going off.
Okay, when we get the rooster approval, I'm not sure, because the one person I know that has gone and studied in Israel is very religious. We've argued theology before at fencing, right? So I mean, it's someone I've known for quite a long time, and he's very pious and very devout, and that's why he would go study there.
The party kids were not.
Or Ari Shafir. I mean, we talked about him last year around this time, talking about going to yeshiva there and being very Orthodox and not knowing how to turn on lights. Wait. Right. The rooster agrees with both of us. So which is it, right? These you're saying very nationalist, and what does that mean? Well, very secularist. You've clearly watched more of the footage from the rave than I have. What Buddha statue?
Yeah, giant Buddha statue. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, again, it depends on what rabbi you're talking to. But many of them were saying these people are out there, they're committing idolatry because they're raving in front of a giant Buddha statue. So it just depends what rabbi you're listening to, and which version of rabbinical Judaism you're practicing, or if you even believe in God. But I mean, not a lot of these young Israelis are particularly religious, and if they are, it's more of like a cultural religiosity. They're not. I think it would surprise a lot of people to talk with them to realize that there is not as much faith in a creator as you would expect in a country that has been created for a people that profess a claim on having the creator revealed himself to them. That would be the best way of describing it.
We're gonna have to have guests to actually answer all of this. But right now, Casey, are religious Jews exempted from military service in Israel? I don't think so. Why would anybody be exempted? I thought everyone was by age. Do you know?
I'd have to check.
Okay.
Maybe at one time there's been exemptions. I'm sure there are exemptions, but I think for the most part there's no exemptions.
My sense was I mean it was like more like Switzerland, that you are, when you come up for the age, you have to go serve.
Yeah, it's like Cyprus.
Yeah.
You turn 19 and you've got to go to national service.
Right. And you have a time, and
Yeah.
and it has a, I mean, it seems to me culturally must have a bonding effect, because everybody in your cohort, your age cohort, serves together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like being in college and being a fraternity or a sorority,
Right.
I suppose, in that sense. I mean, I don't know. I haven't served in Israel. I've just partied with a lot of Israelis.
Well, I'm
but
sure this was not
pioneer.
the way that everybody thought this stream was going to go, right, you know, to start with, right? Yeah, raving with the.
But that it's an important dialectic.
Yeah.
It's like a really, really important dialectic for people to kind of get burned into their consciousness, like the rave versus the militarism. This is it. That's the region. Yeah.
So this is, like I said, the Jews I've known, at least in Chicago, maybe because we have a big Orthodox community, tend to be very religiously Jewish. So but I have also heard what you're saying, that the Israelis themselves are not necessarily as religiously Jewish as the American Jews, the Jews living here.
Yes. Well, you've got different pockets. You've got your ultra Orthodox. I mean,
we have ultra Orthodox in the north part of the city. I think more of the synagogues around here are Reformed, but I don't know if I have all the categories right. But I certainly, I mean, there's a lot of Jews that live around me in this part of the neighborhood, and we have a lot of Jews on campus, and they seem to be. I saw some young men with fringes and such standing outside one of our gates this afternoon, with a little table and a QR code. So I don't know what they were. They had the QR code, but no sign. So I don't know what they were actually trying to point people to. But and a lot of a Chabad house and a Hillel house, and like and they all had the Sukkot up last week as part of the festival.
Well,
so I just assume they're all very religious.
No,
okay.
No.
The ones I know are, no. I guess.
Isn't that interesting? Well, you know, like Abby, it's really. I mean, there's a strong Jewish community in a city in Australia that were breaking out on Shabbat and jumping over rooftops to try and get into their synagogue to do the Friday prayers. And this was during COVID lockdowns, right? So you've got that level of religiosity where rain, hail, or tyranny, they're going into synagogue. And then there's the others, which are, you know, like the young people in the front of the newspaper this morning that have just decided to pack a bag and take a flight and go over there to.
I think they were from Peru.
To join the reserves.
Weren't they that group from Peru that we saw?
We've got some from Australia that have gone over as well. Yeah. So. Yeah, no, they're not all religious.
I feel like we're straying from our planned topic, but maybe we're circling around trying to get to.
Well, I mean, I see it as like
exactly what we're talking about. So we have, on the one hand, I know I'm a little bit teasing because I was like, maybe the thing is, it's like, okay. And then I was reading Simi Michael Jones to prep a little bit, as you do. One, he was talking about the Australian Catholic bishops putting warning signs on the gospel readings at Easter, saying, you know, they're anti-Semitic, basically. Like the Gospel of St. Matthew is anti-Semitic, the Gospel of Luke is anti-Semitic. Not sure where we're supposed to go with this, and it being that trap for Christians perpetually saying if you actually follow what is said in the Passion, you're evil because you're anti-Semitic.
Well, no.
So we were going to talk through the 3 trials in Jesus Christ Superstar and consider whether we can get to what is truth, right? And I was also thinking in the other context of saying, so why is Jesus crucified? And I did have one of my students recently suggest something. It was like, couldn't Jesus have just escaped? And it had literally never occurred to me to wonder that. Like, what? Run away? I think that's Socrates. But no, he quite matter of factly said, I mean, it's interesting to, so one, happily I can report from the field and the 2-day conference that I participated in at the University of Chicago that we are still hanging strong on our ability to have difficult discussions. And, freedom of inquiry and expression. Fie on you who refuse to. We have freedom of inquiry and expression at the University of Chicago. And for the most part, the students, I mean, everybody's talking about what's going on in the Holy Land, but calmly for the most part. I mean, I think the sense is this is incredibly serious, and we would really rather it not turn into World War III with nuclear bombs. Jordan Peterson needs to stop dreaming. Did you see one of the? He's been tweeting. Vox and Milo have been noticing some of his tweets, and one of them he was tweeting about it. I saw for the first time, and I can't remember how long, nuclear bombs in my dreams, and I'm like, go back to sleep. Please. This is, and telling us all we know who to hate now and such. It's like, happily I can report that the professors and students at the University of Chicago are a little calmer and able to see that this is not a situation that you want to rush into.
Yeah, don't throw gasoline on an already, just stop throwing gas on it. Yeah,
they want us to throw gas on it.
Yeah, they do.
They and whoever they are, we will continue to try to figure out who the they is, right? We'll call them powers and principalities now because they're clearly demonic. That you can, and the other image I keep thinking of is actually the Iliad, when it's clear the gods enjoy war, right? That's I haven't reread it in a while. Your rooster's agreeing with me, but Mars eats war, right? He loves it. So don't give in to these demons. Let's figure out how not to. And yeah, but the most curious thing that someone said is like, couldn't Jesus I can't even remember if it was topical this week or last week, but just couldn't Jesus have gotten away? And I'm like, that truly literally never occurred to me. I'll say that's the funniest thing. It's like, couldn't he have just gone north to Galilee and stayed there? Just, don't let, so I get, it's like Annas and Caiaphas here. We'll get to them. The slide. Okay. Oh, like here's Judas with the tanks, right? It's like that they just, they're meant to feel inevitable. Like you're going to inevitably be in the midst. There's Annas and Caiaphas, right? Couldn't Jesus have just not been in Jerusalem?
I suppose so.
Yeah, we'll just meditate on that for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I do feel this. It's like, so the problem with, I mean, to go political on this again, the problem with the Balfour Declaration saying, I should have reread it before talking about it off the top of my head, but it's the agreement that's made for the Jews to have a state, right? Somebody can look it up for us. Which is then fulfilled 30 years later in the establishment of Israel. But interestingly, throughout the 19th century, and particularly in the late 19th century with the Zionists, there are discussions of other places to have this state. that it's not necessary. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
necessary that it was in Palestine, apparently,
they were going to put it in Australia.
or Argentina,
Mm-hmm.
or I mean, and I was also looking at maps
Madagascar,
that
Uganda.
it's about
Lots of
the
places.
territory of the state now is about the size of New Jersey. It's tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, those are little bitty states in the United States. And like a sliver of Utah. What happened?
A little tiny slice of beachfront property compared to the North American continent, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm.
So, couldn't the Jews just have settled somewhere else? I mean, to me, I think probably that's like the disbelief as saying, well, couldn't Jesus have just run away?
Yeah.
It's like, well, couldn't you just settled somewhere else so that you weren't in this situation? I mean, and the other, and so then I started thinking about, okay, so that's the Zionist problem. The first century problem is couldn't the Jews just not have been at odds with Pilate or the Romans? I mean, we've got Herod. We'll go back to Herod, and then of course here's Herod dancing. What I realize now is I really need to read Josephus. Because these things that you've sort of taken as passive knowledge all your life, and you're just like, wait, no, I really, really need to read this. I don't have time right now to read Rashid Khalidi. I have been reading Peter Novick over the last year because I've been thinking about the Holocaust question. But with the people that were living under the Romans, for the Romans, for Titus to come in under the Emperor Vespasian, and for Titus to come in and destroy the city completely, destroy the temple that not this Herod, but the Herod the Great had built. I mean, there's not even a city there for some time. I think they refounded as Aelia Capitolina later. It's like, and then it started occurring to me, it's like the tension that's in Jesus's story. It's like he's between these three judgments, between the priesthood, between Herod, who is the reason Pilate sends him to Herod class, is because Herod's actually king in the region that Jesus is from. So Pilate's like, you're Herod's rights, you're Herod's case in the song. But it is appropriate for him to have to go be judged by Herod because I think he's from Galilee, right? He's from the northern region. So why even Herod's in the city at the time, presumably for the feast. Okay, so, or Pilate, that the Romans end up destroying the city. They don't do that to most cities. They do it to Carthage and they do it to Jerusalem. Then I sorry, do they do it to Corinth? I'm not sure they destroyed Corinth quite so completely. They take Corinth and Carthage in the same year, 146 BC, and they definitely, as we know, like Carthago Delinda S, they wipe it out and then rebuild it with a forum and baths and things like that. Are there any other cities that Rome actually completely destroys?
I can't think of one. No, I can't think of one.
So it was really fraught in that region for some reason. I mean, and I do find it horrible, as everybody says, it's like, oh, this is the holiest place in the world, and so why are we fighting over it? And I was like, well, it's worth fighting over, clearly, something. But I mean, and why, right? I think the sort of feeling of the energy of why that city matters so much. We talked about it a bit last time, saying there's just geopolitically it matters because it's there on that very significant coast in the Mediterranean, because of the way the sea itself works as a shipping area, the currents and how we haven't done this, right? But that coastline is very significant going between Egypt and Asia Minor because of the way the currents run in the Mediterranean and also the way the winds work. And so it's this meeting place between the sea and the land, and then the land going, east into Asia, of course, is then connecting up with the route to India and China, and Alexander has conquered all that region. So properly speaking, it's not just the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire controls that sea, the ring around the sea, but the Alexander's empire had been that whole land route that is connected. You know, you don't get away, that part of the world doesn't get away from its own geography easily. But what's interesting, what was interesting in Jesus's time, again, as we talked about, is that the Jews are scattered all over the place. So that, and in Pentecost, they're from all nations, speaking all these different languages, because they're there for the Feast of Pentecost, but they're there from all parts of this interconnected world. So it's the center of everything. I was thinking about that. It's like, well, the Jews have a state, and it's not, some desert in a. I mean, Utah is really beautiful. The Mormons moved there, right? The Jews could move there. Wouldn't that be great? It's like, well, no, you're choosing to be in the place that's in the center of everything. There's something about that too, right? It's like the choice of significance. And you can say, well, but it was our land from centuries ago. Well, you got it from the Canaanites. So the cycle of whose is it is a long story too.
It's a very long story, but also it's a question of covenants as well. The land came with the conditions. That was the covenant, the Mosaic Covenant, to take the land. The children of Israel needed to, and not the state of Israel. We're talking about ancient holy Israelites that were under the Mosaic Covenant. They were required to fulfill that in order to retain their land rights, because God said, I gave it to you, I can take it away. It was not given in perpetuity. There was with no caveat, no condition. The Israelites had to maintain their fidelity to God, the living God. And the whole Old Testament, this is why, I mean, this can sound very very shocking, but I mean, it's the entire history of the Old Testament is the Israelites going in and conquering Canaan, establishing the Commonwealth, then having battles constantly with the neighboring nations, trying to figure out why they didn't genocide everybody when they should have, and who to genocide and who to enslave and who can they intermarry with, and all of these kinds of ongoing arguments, and then establishing a monarchy, then having a civil war. It's like constantly there's no peacetime. It's like constantly ongoing conflict and battles, and then God saying, I'm going to give you over to the Gentiles around you because you're annoying me so much. You've betrayed me, you've broken my heart, so there you go, off to Babylon you go, or off to Persia you go, or there's no point at which they're you know what I mean? This is the kind of world that Christ comes into when he's there, as he is in that story, the retelling, Jesus Christ Superstar. Christ is walking around this land, which has just been this ongoing land rights claim for over 1,000 years, with internecine strife between all of these competing religious sects, and the temple just getting completely overwhelmed by godless materialism. I mean, is it kind of resonating with everybody? Because it's like this is the Holy Land. This is going out into exile, going out into diaspora, having the remnant of the Southern Kingdom come back in to rebuild the temple. Most of them didn't come back. Right.
There's lots of them in Egypt.
Massive... Oh yeah. This is why this is why the Israelite presence in the Middle East is not restricted to just the state of Israel. I mean, there's so many of the Hebrew people just didn't ever go back after they were exiled. It was only a small faction that returned. So
well, and according to Josephus, this I haven't read myself, but it's been cited. In a way that I've double checked, right? He says it's the people that came back from Babylon that were the Jews. He calls the Judeoi, the Jews. Yes. specifically. And the scholar whose work I've used a lot of to think about where Christianity comes from, Margaret Barker, talks about how, so it's only the elite. When the Babylonians, when Nebuchadnezzar, takes Jerusalem and destroys the temple, destroys Solomon's temple, and carries off all the furniture, right? So where did the ark go at this point? Okay, it's already been sent to Ethiopia. We know that. When Nebuchadnezzar carries off all the treasure, he also carries off the elites, but the rest of the people still were there. And they carry on with their traditions. And some of them you can see in the Gospels are people like the Sumerians who believe they are still worshiping the Lord. And therefore, when Jesus meets with the Samaritan woman and she's asking him for water, and he says he'll give her living water, and she says, I don't know what that is. That he's in conversation with these other peoples other than the Jews is, yes, there are other segments of what had been the ancient tradition still alive among the people, and the Jews are the subset of the elites who came back from Babylon.
Yep. Excuse me. Yes, and even they didn't stay unified.
Right.
Because after Roman conquest, Judea was still fighting itself.
Well, it's Palestine. I mean, the Roman province.
Yes.
Yep. I'm wanting now to I did when I did my New Testament courses in college, we read about a lot of this. We read about the Hellenistic kingdoms, and I know that Herod the Great and who massacred babies he's one of these client kings of Rome, and Herod Antipas, the one that this guy is portraying in the movie, I don't know as much about. I think I need to read Josephus, but the meditations on all of this of how Jesus, I mean, everybody knows this, like Jesus, the simple version of things is Jesus gets killed because he looks like a zealot. He looks like one of these rebels that the Romans are worried about in keeping control of this region. And so he's simply executed as yet another revolutionary. I mean, in this sense, it's saying, the zealots to the Romans are a bit like Hamas is to Israel. They're terrorists of sorts, which is why Barabbas is there in the story, because he's under death sentence for having killed someone. I think I know that. Then you start realizing you're not sure which bits are oral tradition, which bits are in which text, and which bits because of So we got variety of layers here now, right? How many layers have we peeled into this time? So we have the deep history of Israel and the complexity of its existence in the Old Testament. You have the Hellenistic kingdoms and the Roman Empire and the overlaying and exactly what's happening and why Jesus is on trial between three different groups. Between Herod, who's the puppet king in Galilee, although I think in Pilate saying this case is for Herod, meaning I don't really have jurisdiction over you because you're not a Roman citizen, I think. Then Pilate as governor of that region for the Roman Empire, and then the temple priesthood of Caiaphas and Annas. Okay, and then we have our ability to see all of this because of the 19th century Zionist movement. We haven't dealt with the Crusades yet. The 20th century British desire to can maintain control of the seas, which includes contesting Ottoman power, such as it was at that point. The 20th century establishment of Israel following on World War II, and we haven't even dealt with the Americans. Although they're in the movie in the guise of the military equipment that the Romans have. I suppose. If those are American tanks, I don't know. I have no capacity. I can barely recognize different car makes. You think I know tanks? No, I don't know tanks. I rely on others to do that kind of thing.
So we have a okay, so that's the snapshot.
Oh, shall we do the Crusades quickly?
Yeah, you should. I think you should.
Okay, so Christians will all be worried about whether or not we should be calling for a crusade to regain the Holy Land. Okay.
Yes.
This is when there's like, I will explain. No, I'll summarize too. It's too complicated. So the Romans capture Jerusalem, destroy the temple, make it of their own city. But when Constantine converts, his mother, Helena, goes to Jerusalem and digs up the cross, famously. And from that time, we start getting like real pilgrimage accounts of people going to Jerusalem, Christians going to Jerusalem. And so we have things like the 4th and 5th century pilgrimages. Egeria famously makes a pilgrimage and describes some of the worship that they have in the church there. But there've been, as you said, there've been churches in the region all along. So there's very ancient Christian communities in Jerusalem and Antioch and Alexandria. Those are patriarchates. And when the Arabs conquer those regions, well, it's complicated because of the relationship they have with the Eastern Roman Empire at that point, because Constantinople is actually in the East, not Rome. So all of those people, all of the anons out there in the internet world blaming Rome for everything. Remember, Constantinople is in the East, just where, the actual empire maintained its power for all those centuries until it was conquered by the Ottomans in 1453. I don't know if I can do this simply. Anyway, in the midst of all of this,
I'm mentally mapping everything.
I can't actually, this is, my one sort of most of the time superpower is keep all these dates straight. So in the 7th century, is the Muslim conquest of all of these regions, which had been Christian for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that's from 632, I think they take Jerusalem for the first time. So for nearly 400 years, 500 years, almost 500 years, they're under Muslim control, except the Muslims in the region are in contest with the Byzantine emperors, who in the mid 11th century are getting overtaken by not the Ottoman Turks, but the Seljuk Turks. And they ask for help from the Franks, who have been dealing with all of these invasions. Oh, no, I can't do this simply. You guys, if you ever try to caricature Christian, Muslim, and Jew against me, you will get this at length. Okay, so the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I asked for mercenary help from the Franks, who are also Christian. They tell atrocity stories. I've been thinking about this too this week, how there are atrocity stories about what the Turks are doing to Christians in the Holy Land. And the thing is, some of them are actually borne out by the experience of pilgrims who've been going to Jerusalem in the mid 11th century and being attacked. And so there's stories circulating in the West that it's not safe for Christians out there. We need to go help our Christian brethren. And so this expedition sets out, and lo and behold, because the Muslims are fighting each other between the Seljuk Turks and the Fatimids from Egypt, the Seljuks have taken Jerusalem and the Fatimids reclaim it. And when the Franks show up, they take Jerusalem from the Fatimids, who've just taken it back from the Seljuks. This is in 1099. And for about 100 years, until 1187, the Christians are in control of Jerusalem, and they've never been in control of Jerusalem ever since Saladin. Now, you would think, therefore, that Saladin is a great hero among the Muslims chroniclers, but you'd be wrong. Because, in fact, as far as the Muslims are concerned, this whole sort of crusade stuff was kind of border skirmishes, and they never really paid much attention to it because basically they lost, they won, right? It's a big deal for the Christians in the West, but for the the actual local powers in the region, they're fighting with each other as much as they're fighting with these Franks that show up and hang out on the coast for a bit. And it's in fact not until the 19th century, the irony is delicious. It's not until the 19th century when Arab historians under the Ottomans, or Muslim historians under the Ottomans, start reading Christian imperialist accounts of the Crusades being written by the French and the English in the 19th century, that they start caring about Saladin at all. You guys weren't expecting that, right? Bernard Lewis has done he did a really great little book on the Christian, basically the problem of the Christian invention of the heroic Saladin. And they're in the late 19th century, they're like Otto, is it one of the German kings, I forget which one, there's he puts up a statue of Saladin, right? They're honoring their great heroes. And in English, the one most responsible for this is Walter Scott, in his book The Talisman, who makes Saladin into the sort of noble chivalric opponent of Richard I. And it's thanks to basically what English desire to be in good with the Ottomans to help them against their enemies, the French, and then later English desire to beat the Ottomans. No, wait. You say nobody's ever clearly on anybody's side in any of these stories. What is truth, right? That the 20th century valorization of Saladin as against those evil crusaders is, ironically enough, literally an invention of Christian crusade historiography.
So they wrote propaganda so good the enemy took it up.
Yeah, basically. It's the Christians like Walter Scott who made Saladin into the great hero that he is, so that in Kingdom of Heaven, for example, Saladin, Orlando Bloom, guy playing Saladin, who I don't know his name. I like Orlando Bloom. I didn't pay attention who was portraying Saladin, but Saladin's like, what is Jerusalem? He says, nothing, everything. I can't remember which direction he says it, one or the other, right? And Orlando Bloom playing Balian of Ibelin hilariously, and if we will not do that, bringing irrigation to the Middle East. So funny.
I'm sorry, that's so funny.
Talking about the British fantasy carrying on, right? It's like we have the British fan. It's like
that is chutzpah.
It's the British telling this story over and over again. We, the Empire, are going to save the Holy Land. Oh, here, we'll set up this Jewish state there. And, oh, wait, they're Arabs there already. Well, we were friends with them when Lawrence of Arabia was helping them, but we're not friends with them anymore.
Oh, that's so funny. We brought them pipes.
So now you realize why, we were absolutely convinced that this pilot, the guy playing pilot, had to be British because of the way he sneered so well. But he's actually from Chicago. It's like, oh no, I don't know which story I'm in anymore.
He was dripping with cynicism. It was very well played. But yeah, he has very heavy British energy.
Only to say, okay, so one, obviously, we're doing this in English, this conversation, from the perspective of you guys. We've been talking about the pirate level of things that have been going on. It's the disentangling our present moment of geopolitical fuckery, quite frankly, from the layers of tangled webs that have been created in the 19th and 20th century, and then disentangling it from what was going on in the Roman Empire in Jesus's day. History's hard.
Yeah.
and literally off the top of my head, then doing the story of what happened to the Jews after Titus.
Oh yeah.
That's yet another incredibly complicated layer of things. But we've only been going for an hour, so I suppose we can keep going. I felt like I was monologuing there really badly forever and ever and ever. Forever and ever and ever. But
no, it was a good monologue.
Okay.
I was in the stream. I was yeah.
You're
good.
probably the only one that can follow all that. Everybody else will have to rewind and keep listening. I do handouts for my.
You should all listen.
I do handouts for my classes because I may have all of this chronology, these crossing web-like timelines in my head. Tartario is easy compared to real history.
It's reach for the lasers at this stage. Like you're doing it.
the rave of the chronology and the timeline, and like which one of these, which timeline are we in now? It's like you have no idea.
Yeah, that's how it feels.
Yeah,
it's exactly how it feels. And it's just in the background the whole time. Like, what are we doing now? Doesn't matter. We just have to get the sunrise. Why? Because that's what you do.
Now we're just in like
dropping everywhere on the floor. And it looks so good. Doesn't matter. It's only 4:20 in the morning. Keep going. Sorry. It really is like that, though.
This is such an apt metaphor for where we are right now. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Jesus is going to couldn't you stay awake? All right, no.
Yeah. Stay awake and pray with me.
Yeah. So what is truth?
How exhausting. What is truth? That's Christ.
Let's unpack that as well as we've done the rave of the timelines.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this is where we last time when we did we recognized that the movie actually helped us with Judas as one kind of response to Jesus and Mary as another. And what soberly, because you can't. I mean, considering that it's like we're going to have to talk about Herod first, and then Annas and Caiaphas, and then Pilate. It's like, and this is about God's suffering, so bear with us. That the play actually, whether it solves the question, it asks the right questions. It has each of these characters asking exactly the questions that everybody it gets caught on, it gets tripped up on, right? So Weber and Rice did a brilliant job of articulating the misunderstanding that, the triangulating the misunderstanding that is exposed in Jesus's trial. We're back with Herod dancing.
Oh yeah.
So here I've got okay. I'm not gonna sing it, but I can well, maybe I will.
Sing.
I'm not sure I can. No, it takes too long. No. Jesus, I'm overjoyed to meet you face to face. Nice, the face to face, right? Because one, you're just gonna think. Truthfully, I do not know whether I can credit Weber and Rice with this much detail and complexity in their lyrics, but I'm gonna, right? So meeting Jesus face to face is, of course, the longing that Christians have, according to Paul, right? It's like, now we see through a glass darkly, then face to face. And so that we are, in fact, as Christians, desiring what Herod says he gets at this moment, right? And so you're saying, like, somehow he is going to completely misunderstand Jesus, even though he met him face to face. And then that, I mean, in fact, in the play, all of the characters misunderstand Jesus, truthfully. Prepping for my class for tomorrow, my Professor Kelber, in his meditation on Mark shows that what Mark does in his gospel is say basically everybody misunderstood Jesus, even the disciples. And it's like Mark's gospel is quite so depressing because, Jesus gives the disciples, inside information. They don't get it. They don't get it. They don't get it. They're obsessed always with, when you come into your power, do I get to sit on your right and left hand? Of course, well, the thieves that are crucified with him too. So he comes into his power and they're crucified, and the John and James are wanting to be like on his throne. So here, Herod being this character that thinks, I'm a power in the world. I'm king. Isn't that what you want? Here's one king facing the other, right? The Herod king facing Jesus king. And in fact, in the Gospels and certainly in Mark, that's what the disciples think they're going to get, right? They keep thinking we are going to get to be, you're going to take Herod's place, right? So Jesus, I'm overjoyed to meet you face to face. You've been getting quite a name all around the place. The name is, of course, the holy thing that the priests carry on their forehead when they go into the temple. And the name of Christ is what we're marked by at our baptism. I don't know whether they meant this. These are just good rhymes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's face to face in his name, and that there is, he's here in place, in time, that he can get a name all around the place. So it's very well written, don't you think? Healing cripples, raising from the dead. And now I understand you're God. At least that's what you've said. Now, that being one of the things that, of course, everybody now claims that Jesus never said, but technically he does and he doesn't in the Gospels. He says that's what you say, or he'll talk about himself in the third person in the stories. At least that's what you've said, that being a problem, right? So you are the Christ. You're the great Jesus Christ. What's the Christ? Prove to me you're divine. Change my water into wine. That is literally in John, the first miracle, which is Mary nudging Jesus at the marriage of Cana too. They have no wine. Change my water into wine. Jesus does do that. Not in the movie, but in Herod's taunt. That's all you need to do, then I'll know it's all true. Come on, King of the Jews. That's the best line. That's the best stanza. But then he goes on with all of these different taunts, right? Prove to me you're no fool. Walk across my swimming pool. If you do that for me, then I'll let you go free. Come on, King of the Jews. I only ask what I'd ask any superstar. What is it that you have got that puts you where you are? I am waiting. Yes, I am a captive fan. I'm dying to be shown that you're not just any man. They had fun writing this, right?
Yes, they did.
Because he is captive, obviously, in his sins in this scene because of the way his court is behaving, and he is dying. But it's the taunt gets more and more. He starts off kind of campy and outrageous, right? And then gets madder and madder because Jesus won't answer him.
Yeah, he turns vicious
and then screams at him. So what do we learn? You're a joke. You're not the Lord. You're nothing but a fraud. The anger is very interesting. He's really furious at Jesus for not doing tricks for him. And saying, if you, you can see, it's like the kind of prayers that people make. If you're God, do this for me. Prove to me that you're God. Prove it. Come on. Yeah. And then gets angrier and angrier because Jesus won't prove it. But listing things, in fact, in the stories he has actually done, but won't do it on demand, won't do it now.
Yes. I was just thinking of that line, the first line, face to face. I think it's Jacob that says this when he's realized that he's been wrestling the angel of the Lord and says, I've seen my Lord face to face. I think that's the text they're referencing. which is interesting, because Jacob has a very profound experience after that point. His name is changed to Israel. That's the point where the word Israel is introduced to the story.
Right.
God renames Jacob Israel. So Herod is face to face with Christ. Instead of having this change, complete identity change, he's requesting a miracle vending machine.
Right. Which is,
it's a kind of, it's a poignant depiction of the degradation of the nation from its origin, from its roots, to go from this very I mean, that's a miraculous thing. Jacob wrestling the angel of the Lord. He's like limping afterwards, you know. And then having a holy nation which is deformed into this campy kind of cocktail regatta, you know.
Yeah.
It's like what this is the way you're greeting the king. This is you know, it's shocking.
I think, thinking about it right now, I think there is actually tradition in the late medieval mystery plays of having Herod be camp. It's maybe not camped up quite like this, but there is a tradition of Herod having this kind of maybe comic element. I'm not sure. But the comedy here is, you know, he's playing a fool, demanding Jesus. He said, "Prove to me you're no fool. Walk across my swimming pool." The questions that he's asking are the ones that C.S. Lewis was saying. If you know, Jesus is fraud, fool, or what he said, right? He's like, he's going to say that he was a liar. Are you going to say he was a fool, which is to a certain extent what the 19th century Ernst Renan came up with. It's sort of like he was deluded into thinking he was something other than just a charismatic leader. The fraud part, it's of course like it. Jesus is not the only one who's said to have done miracles. There were other, you know, as everyone knows, there's stories of other miracle workers in the period. So the miracles of themselves don't prove anything, because you just could be a magician.
Yes. You're either a magician or you've got Jerusalem syndrome.
Right.
The syndrome where people visit the Holy Land and suddenly start acting like raving lunatics who think they're prophets.
Is there something in the air there? What is it?
I don't know. What is going on?
It's not that high. It's not as high as the mountain I drove over, right? So
it's not that altitude.
It's not the lack of oxygen.
Yeah. What is it? But yeah, the I mean, that's the confusion, isn't it? Oh, another one claiming to be the Messiah. Another one. Okay, here's another one. It's like a guru central. The guru headquarters. Oh, there's another one. Okay, which is what they did in the film, depicting him in that guru role.
Right.
You see, everyone's kind of like, oh, great, another one. There's another teacher. There's another rabbi. Another rabbi claiming to be the Messiah. This one's real this time. So of course, then in that context, you kind of understand the mockery of Herod, not to justify it, but you understand it. It's like, oh, there's another one. His eyes are not opened to see that he's actually standing in front of the promised Messiah of Israel. So it's an interesting thing, because you can see the two perspectives there.
Well, it's so I understand that since then there have been with the is it Sabata Zevi? Is that the 17th century one? Yeah,
Yeah.
sort of
When basically,
continuing
like,
hope and expectation of, oh yes, this is it this time, and
yeah,
not,
yeah,
and none of them. I mean, Zevi, doesn't he convert to Islam?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But he took a large percentage of world Jewry along for the
Mm.
ride. A lot of people thought that he was it. So yeah, it's like it's just this very the wrist is going off. Uh, there can only be one Messiah, but there's been so many different people claiming to be the Messiah
I got an
in
email
the
from
context.
someone claiming to be the Messiah this morning. It was very weird.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
it's like this book I've written and it's about me, and I'm like, I'm not sure that's you, right? So, I mean, that I say this as you were saying this. Like, there have been so many people claiming to be the savior of everybody,
Yeah, yeah.
and they are quite easily shown up to be frauds.
Mm.
In fact, usually within their lifetimes, shown up to be frauds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's a problem then because like in the film, you have the established priesthood of the people there, uh, you know, standing on the scaffolding
I've got them on screen there too.
and having Caiaphas discussing this with the rest of the Sanhedrin, and then having this panic because their role in their priesthood is supposed to be preparing the people for the Messiah. And then they're living in this environment where there's so many different people claiming to be him, to be it. Their reaction in the film is very well done because you can see how they're panicking. They don't really know what to do with Christ. They're panicking. There's the Christ at the rave, with all the people around him singing Hosanna. And then there's Christ dealing with them, the priesthood, how he interacts with them, which is not how he interacts with the people. He treats them in a completely different way. And then this priesthood panicking up there in the scaffolds as they're looking out on the land, which is this foreign occupied imperial dance floor. I would coin the phrase now as the Holy Land is the imperial dance floor of the world. And so
you can coin. I
I
approve the coinage.
Is it right? Good. But they don't know what to do with them because, like you said before, there's a triangulation problem that comes up really quickly. Because who wants to be the one that says it's him,
right,
or not? I mean, either way you make the statement, you make the declaration. It's like a Russian roulette kind of situation, because if you make that declaration, suddenly the entire dynamics of that little dance floor is going to change. Everything's going to change.
So it's
like dominoes.
What you just said there, that's interesting. My student asking, why didn't Jesus just run away, right? And the opposite. This is just interesting. Why didn't Caiaphas and Annas just recognize him? I mean, Nicodemus seems to have, right? Or Joseph of Arimathea.
Yes.
Is it Joseph? Who buries him, right? I forget. They were there. Caiaphas and Annas, and they are It's got, it's like, what to do about this Jesus mania? How do we deal with a carpenter king? Where do we start with a man who is bigger than John was when John did his baptism thing? The place of John the Baptist in this whole story we can't deal with right now, but and interesting, the movie completely ignores. They don't have, that's the only place where John the Baptist shows up. And Caiaphas says, fools, you have no perception. The stakes we are gambling are frighteningly high. We must crush him completely. So like John before him, this Jesus must die. For the sake of the nation, this Jesus must die. Now, ironically, that is, he does for the sake of the nation. But they're worrying about they're worried about the Romans crushing them as they did, which is, of course, the Gospels are all aware of that, because the tradition is they're probably written down after the temple is destroyed. And trying to deal with that, Jesus had prophesied the fall of the city. Well, the city has fallen because the Romans did crush them. But,
yes.
And so the simplest way of saying is that Annas and Caiaphas are serving the peace of the Romans by not allowing this kind of enthusiastic, rebel movement to develop. And that in the movie they do have Simon Zelotes telling him, just touch a hate of Rome, then you will rise to a greater power. We will win ourselves a home. They're clearly, the libretto was clearly talking in terms of the political aspirations of the zealots, the revolutionaries. They're not revolutionary. They're anti-Romans.
Yeah. They
can't be revolutionaries like the American Revolution. They were never colonists from there. They just want the Romans out. But the Romans are there.
They're decolonizing.
Yeah, they want to decolonize. They want to be uncolonized by Rome.
Yeah.
And Rome has been, it's like even the local particulars, who, Mark Antony and Crassus and Pompey and then Augustus and then whatever. And to a certain extent, the Herodians had been able to negotiate with Rome to have some local power. So, but they're under military occupation.
Yeah, that's all the centurions running around.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've kind of negotiated some kind of autonomy, but it's not really an autonomy, and it's like a house of cards. You can pull one card out and the whole thing is just going to collapse, because it's also precariously constructed between all of the interests that are there at the time, which you can see. That was genius. The scaffolding was genius. Putting them in the scaffolds was genius. They're constructing this experiment with priestcraft, and they're up there staring over everything, and you kind of you see the joke. It's like this nation building project that they're doing up there, and then there's this guy who enters on a donkey and terrifies. So you think, what's going on? Why is he so scary to you? Why,
right? Yeah.
Why should this be so? This should be such a threat. And it's interesting because and now we're talking about it, you think they knew it was him.
It's okay. So we have the actual Gospels as opposed to the Jesus Christ Superstar Gospels. And Sorry, my eye should fall perfectly on the passage. And I'm not, because I'm finding Peter's denial instead.
Mm.
And I actually I'd marked for Pilate. I suppose it's in Matthew that you have more detail about the trial, not in John. And you have in John more of the trial with Pilate. And see, if you really want to do all this, you have to have the gospel parallels so that you know which exact details in which exact gospel, because each of the gospels has a different sort of, because in fact the evangelists don't agree on who Jesus is. They know he's important. But their sense of exactly why he's important is subtly different. And I'm saying with Mark, it's with what Professor Kelber argues is, if you pay attention to what happens in Mark, all of the Jerusalem party surrounding Jesus doesn't get it, right? Peter doesn't get it. His family doesn't get it. And there is and the earliest church is, according to Acts, in Jerusalem. But then after Jerusalem is destroyed, everyone has to say, okay, what happened, right? Did we lose? And Mark's saying, no. Jesus constantly in his preaching goes to Galilee. So the church belongs in Galilee. That's where we need to go. And so he's writing for Galilean Christians, saying, it's here. Matthew and Luke and John are they're writing for a different sort of consolation of, well, this is who he is. Well, this is who he is. This is who he is. So this exercise of multiple voices describing Jesus is the tradition. Right? So you're finding out that he's not easy to describe. So what they say in Matthew, Peter follows to the court of the high priest and sits with the servants so he can watch. And the chief priests and the whole council sought false witness against Jesus, that they might put him to death. And they found not, whereas many false witnesses had come in. And last of all, there came 2 false witnesses. And they said, this man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God, and after 3 days to rebuild it. And the high priest, rising up, said to him, answer thou nothing to the things which these witness against thee? But Jesus held his peace. And the high priest said to him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tellest if thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, thou hast said it. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power of God, and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his garments, saying, he hath blasphemed. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now you have heard the blasphemy. What think you? But they answered, saying, he is guilty of death. So they consider what he answers as blasphemous, at least as Matthew tells it. Indeed, why can't they? I mean, it's like that we could say they don't want to recognize him, because to recognize him then recognizes the Christ, who is the anointed king, and therefore they will be rebelling against Rome, and therefore they'll be crushed, as it says in the song. It's not as if they're, later in the 60s they don't have revolts against Rome and then end up crushed by Titus. That's an interesting. It's like, what if the high priest had simply recognized that Jesus was the Christ? These are questions I've never considered.
It's a really good question. Would he have been put to death?
Would they have been put to death? Would the Romans have just come in and said, so then we go to Pilate, right? We get to Pilate. Here we go. Now Pilate sneering at him. And it is interesting, of course, in John, Pilate gets the best, conversation with Jesus, or he gets several conversations. He take him out, come back in, saying, "Who are you?"
Ecce homo. Behold the man.
Well, he says that after he's had him whipped.
Yeah.
Here, we'll get.
So I'm thinking, okay. he's got the Herodian usurper monarch confused. He's got the Sanhedrin confused.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the Roman procurator confused. So they have
okay, so I'm gonna.
They all have. Sorry. No, I'm thinking each of those three groups or persons have something enormous to lose in recognizing who he truly was and is.
Right.
So it's like a very high stakes poker game. They've all got to keep their poker faces on, and then because they have to maintain the pantomime of their position,
mm-hmm.
while they're actually trying to figure out if it's the real Messiah or not, or in the case of Pilate, he's got to figure out whether or not this guy's a political threat, or he's meeting an innocent man, which for someone in that position, I mean, he wouldn't. Where his profession is governing for an imperial power who don't really see things in the same. I mean, they don't have a Christian morality at all, and he's condemning people to death all the time.
Oh yeah.
So it's like he would have the cynicism of a prison warden in a lot of ways. It's like, oh yeah, everyone in prison is innocent.
Right.
Because they're all innocent, right? They're all not guilty. So it's like he says, "Who are you? Who is this person who seems innocent?" Like I'm seeing the irony in the scene there. It's
mm-hmm.
like, well, how powerful it is for someone like that to have met a man who finally he sees and thinks, "I'm standing in front of someone who has no fault." I mean, that's very powerful.
I'm also thinking, so as you're saying, yes, lots and lots and lots of people are crucified by the Romans.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty common tactic they have for terrifying the population. I mean, famously Spartacus, because of the movie, and they crucify thousands all along the road going out of Rome.
Mm-hmm.
You can't leave Rome without walking past dying men.
Yeah.
So it's nothing. I mean, it's nothing unusual for people to be crucified in the period. It's horribly ordinary.
Mm. But it was a disgraceful death. It's ordinary, but it was a disgraceful death.
But what I'm thinking of, it's the question is always, so if none of these people in the story can recognize Jesus as the Christ, and the way that the gospel, I mean, I do find it interesting. The gospels are all indirect in describing who Jesus is. I mean, it's like that's what you say, or the Son of Man will come. It's like these third person answers. thou sayest, I am a king, for this I was born, and for this I came into the world, that I should give testimony of the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. That's a kind of, it's frustrating, right? But the the authors themselves are all trying to say, he is the Christ, he is the Christ, he is the Christ, whatever this means, as if they're not sure what it means. Sometimes, John has all the wonderful I am statements, and Mark starts out with, this is the gospel. He is quite blunt about it as, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That's Mark, right? So he's definitely the Son of God.
Yes.
Why, when it's clear in the story, none of the authorities can have any category to even recognize Jesus in these terms? Anybody did.
That's a good question.
Because it's as we've been saying, it's not like there's other candidate. It's not like there's not other candidates. Which is the usual claim of, Jesus is actually just assimilated to X, Y, or Z, right? He fits these other difficult categories of people, and so they're just expecting strange, crazy miracle workers all over the place, and he fits. He fits. I'm always struck by this feeling, and I'm hoping it's not true. Everybody's always looking for the other gospels that tell the truth, other than the ones that are accepted as gospel. And the actual truth of Jesus is in those hidden texts that are still buried in caves somewhere. But what has persistently struck me is how it's actually harder to find stories like his than it feels like it should be, if in fact it's a really common thing. Does that make sense? There's a lot of Christian stories and saints and such,
it makes sense.
And I have had colleagues in the field tell me, oh no, there's Candida Moss, who has also written books about how the martyrs aren't real. She says it's a storytelling tradition on the part of the Christians to create cult or something. But that, oh yes, there are, miracle worker stories from antiquity that match Jesus's. But to me, that's a little like, it's like the Sabbatai Zevi he was claimed to be the Messiah. So it should be easier to disprove Jesus if he's fake. Shouldn't it? Right? It should be really easy to say you're fake.
I'm just thinking none of those cults remained for 2,000 years.
Right, but we're trying to hit it on the anvil here, right? This heart is like, who is this broken man cluttering up my hallway? Who is this unfortunate? Soldier says. And it's nice that they have the soldier, because the centurion in Mark is the only one who recognizes Jesus. Someone Christ, King of the Jews. Oh, so this is Jesus Christ. I'm really quite surprised. You look so small. Not king at all. We all know that you are news, but are you king, King of the Jews? Jesus, your words, not mine. What do you mean by that? That is not an answer. Answer. He hits those British vowels pretty hard. You're deep in trouble, friend, someone Christ, King of the Jews. How can someone in your state be so cool about his fate? An amazing thing, this silent king. Since you come from Galilee, you need not come to me. You're Herod's race, you're Herod's case. So he goes off to Herod, right? And then he comes back, and we have, so the king is once again my guest. And why is this? Was Herod unimpressed? Caiaphas. We turn to Rome to sentence Nazareth. We have no law to put a man to death. We need him crucified. It's all you have to do. We need him crucified. It's all you have to do. Talk to me, Jesus Christ. You have been brought here, manacled, beaten by your own people. Do you have the first idea why you deserve it? Listen, King of the Jews, where is your kingdom? Look at me. Am I a Jew? And they're paraphrasing what we've been reading, right? So he says, I have no kingdom in this world. I'm through. which is not the way the gospel tells it. There may be a kingdom for me somewhere if you only knew. I think he sings if I only knew. At this point, the writers break down and they're not sure they can they're not sure they themselves believe. Right? Then you are a king. It's you that say I am. I look for truth and find that I get damned. Yeah, and at this point, I think the Jesus Christ Superstar character breaks. Right? He's not. They're not able to sustain the tension that the gospel does. But what is truth? Is truth unchanging, a changing law? We both have truths. Are mine the same as yours? And there we are in modernity.
Yeah.
Right.
Your truth,
your
my
truth, my truth,
her truth.
Christian's truth is this is the Messiah. The Jew's truth is he's a fraud, fool, appropriately crucified by the Romans because he's an idiot. And the mob singing, "We have no king but Caesar." You hypocrites, you hate us more than him. We have no king but Caesar, crucify him. I see no reason, I find no evil. This man is harmless, so why does he upset you? He's just misguided, thinks he's important. But to keep you vultures happy, I shall flog him. 39 lashes with the count. Where are you from, Jesus? What do you want, Jesus? Tell me. You've got to be careful. You could be dead soon. Could well be. Why do you not speak when I hold your life in my hands? How can you stay quiet? I don't believe you understand. You have nothing in your hands. Any power you have comes to you from far beyond. Everything is fixed, and you can't change it. Pilate, you're a fool, Jesus Christ. How can I help you? The mob sings, and then Pilate's, "Don't let me stop your great self-destruction. Die if you want to, you misguided martyr. I wash my hands of your demolition. Die if you want to, you innocent puppet." Which takes Pilate a little further than the gospel did. Because what Jesus actually said is, "Thou shouldst not have any power against me unless it were given thee from above. Therefore he that hath delivered me to thee hath the greater sin." It's interesting for the movie, or for the play, they want Jesus to be despairing by this point. I don't know. Pilate saying, "You're a fool. You're a puppet." Why didn't Jesus run away? I mean, he marched right into this. He went there to the city to be crucified, according to the Gospels.
I've got Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and it's upside down. It's in front of me as you're saying this. And then another one that's the Encyclopedia of World Mythology, which is also upside down.
Inversions of the power.
Yeah. He couldn't invert anything unless he went to Jerusalem. The power of the usurper King Herod, the power of the Sanhedrin, the power of the Roman procurator, all of that's all power structures that are so established that somebody who hasn't openly declared war on any of them, they're still terrified of him. So it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But it's Jerusalem upside down. Because it's the city that he's weeping over, Jesus wept, and he's crying, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem." So I'm just thinking here, like with my upside down books, why did he go? Why did he go into that? Well, world mythology, the Roman Empire. How do you invert all of that,
Right.
the weight of all of that, and liberate people from the weight of the imperial dance floor? The dynamics that create the rave that turns into a slaughterhouse that is Canaan land, and what Israel was living in, which is that tension constantly between the wandering after strange gods and then the militarism, just this constant tension that the children of Israel were subjected to. If he'd left, would that have been inverted? I don't know. I don't think so. He had to go into Jerusalem, into this passion, go through the torture, go through the humiliation, go through the cross to invert everything.
This is what it
was the only way.
So we talked through this with the Gethsemane meditation on how he carries our sins, but I think why does Jesus going into Jerusalem and being humiliated in this way, in fact, invert all of those scaffolds? Which is when, going back to our topical context of what happened on the dance floor and the the crushing imperial power that carries on in that region. I mean, it is interesting that the Holy Land is crux of empires.
It is.
And to invert the why is it's violent because everyone's claiming the holiness. It's like, no, it's holy because it's like it's where all of this focuses. It's like a focal point. And indeed, it's like, why not put the modern state of Israel in Argentina? I was thinking about this. It's like, if what you wanted to was simply have peaceful worship somewhere where people would leave you alone so that you could worship in your own way. The Amish seem to like avoided modernity, right?
Yeah.
The Mormons moved to Utah, right? And they have the whole state that's very well, I've only been to Salt Lake and driven through southern Utah. It's a pretty wild place, right? So if what you wanted was your own particular worship of God, to go and be in a place left alone by the rest of the world, that's clearly not what the desire was. Something else. I mean, you could say so that I've seen Jews. The thing is, I don't know all the subcategories typically well. I know there's Reformed and Orthodox, and Reformed and Conservative and Orthodox and other subsets. I get it. It's like trying to understand Catholicism. I just thought it was Catholic. No, I did know actually Catholicism was a little more fraught than maybe I appreciated. But wow, it's fraught. The trad cats themselves are broken up into this and that and Mel Gibson and this and that and Mel Gibson. It's like, I don't know. I'm gonna stay here in the 12th century when it's like at least Anselm of Canterbury and his prayers. That's all I know. That I don't think he was a rabbi. I'm not sure whether he's a rabbi, and I also don't know what the like criterion for rabbi is. So like, whether it's a doctoral degree or whether it's a community leader kind of thing, storefront rabbis versus yeshiva PhDs. I think there's a range. So one man does a podcast saying, you know, the world should be grateful for us Jews being sacrificed constantly for you. And I'm like, but why? Why are you there? Being sacrificed. It's like to my students say to me, why didn't Jesus just leave? It's like, why don't you move somewhere else? It's not quite so fraught.
It's a very good question.
I'm sorry, it's too much though, because that was when, was it Herschel? Who's the one the Zionist? Somebody may know.
Theodore Herschel.
Coming up with plans for a state for Jews, right? They did discuss other places.
Yes. Yeah.
If you wanted like not to be right up against Egypt, who apparently does Egypt support Gaza? I'm not clear on any of this. Iran supports Gaza. Who's on whose side? I don't know. I can't do that. I mean, I can actually if I like really read up on it and think about it. I can't do it quite with the chronology that I have from the Middle Ages. But it doesn't seem to me that the sides are particularly clear even in the region. I do know the difference between Sunni and Shia, so there's a little difference there. But as I was telling you, it's like the reason that the Crusaders in the first place in 1099 were able to capture Jerusalem was because it had been besieged the year before by a different group. That the Fatimids had taken it back from the Seljuks. So, you know, this is, and they were both.
Everybody wants.
Yeah, the Fatimids and the Seljuks are both Muslims, so that's not the answer.
No, everybody wants the dance floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
It isn't. It's interesting to say it's a dance floor. Isn't that the Jerusalem was where David set up it's on the threshing floor, right? Isn't it a threshing floor? There's some way in which Jerusalem is the threshing floor. It means that. I need to look that up. What it was before Israel held it.
But that would be an interesting overlapping of themes. Threshing, getting your harvest. And I mean, I don't know. Like it's geographically it's geographically invaluable. It's a geographically invaluable little piece of land, but the mythological weight of that country is about the same.
Is enormous. But I mean, we can tell it that way. We can tell it that way in geopolitical terms because of the shape of Asia and Europe and where the seas and the waterways, other waterways and such are. And yet that always feels just a little unsatisfying. It's like, yes, the geography is that. And so we have the kind of power plays for the control of the area.
Yes.
But which comes first, the feeling of the holiness or the geographical power? And in what way, what kind of relationship do they have to each other? I mean, I'm straight up, I was showing my Eurociv class. It's like, we now, worry about whether or not maps are Eurocentric. Medieval European maps were Jerusalem-centric. Like the whole map of Mundi. Jerusalem is clearly the center of the world. And this level of meaning for us in space and time, saying, I mean, what Casey is saying, Christ could have run. It was his temptation. He did not succumb to the temptation. Indeed. But there was this great sort of story problem. It's like, couldn't you just run away? Live to fight another day? Taught his followers how to be good people without getting crucified?
No, you can't flip the trip in that way.
And recognizing that, in fact, Jesus raised no army. Always. It's like it constantly flips back around. And Judas has him. Do we have him? Yes, here we have superstar. Why didn't you? Right? If you're the Son of God, if you're so powerful, you can work miracles and heal people, why show up as a single human being who doesn't seem to have lightning bolts coming out of his hands? Why aren't you Superman?
Yeah. Where's our where's our miracle working military genius? You know, they wanted Alexander the Great with magic powers.
They did. They actually did. And so there's
Yeah.
there's a really great book of political theory that I read in graduate school. So I, on the one hand, I remember it really well because I took really good notes on it. And on the other hand, if I read it now, I'd probably find out I remember a completely different book from what it is. There's a 2-volume book by Francis Dvornik, who's Russian, I think. It's one of these Byzantine historians talking about the vocabulary of savior kings throughout the Middle East, right? Many of the titles that Jesus is given as sort of throne names, like pastor and shepherd and such like that, the great Middle Eastern divine kings, in fact, carried those names. So one of the interesting things that does happen is, the Christian vocabulary for describing Christ as king fits with all of these ruler titles from the area. He should have been an Alexander. He should have been should have been one of these great warrior kings.
He could have been. But that was not the kingship. I think
he should have been all of the things that the characters in the play ask him, why aren't you? Which is why I do think, even though they give Jesus a little bit too much doubt at the end, more than just the cry of desolation, they do ask the right questions. It's like, why wasn't he the superstar that we all look to our human leaders to be? Now I'm going to just we've done 2 hours now, so we will now let everybody go out of class. I have been thinking about the concern about the Gospels being anti-Semitic, and the argument that they blame the Jews then, and that the blame stays on the Jews now because of the it's their genealogy, right? They're the generation for generations that we blame the Jews. But of course, we remember that everybody who accepted Jesus initially, well, not everybody, the Samaritan woman, but that Jesus came and talked to the children of Israel, and many of them became Christian. And then we don't think of them as Jewish anymore. The Jews are Jews now because they're still rejecting Christ. Not because their ancestors did.
Yeah. It's you don't have to continue with the rejection. It's you are free to.
And the instant you join us in the party, you're a Christian.
Yeah, like you can go. Yeah. It's all right. Like you are free to consider the claims of Christ as the Rabbi of Israel, the King of the Jews. It's all right. Like, you can stop tripping underneath giant Buddha statues or running away from military drafts, or you can just chill and just consider the claims of Christ for, like an afternoon and see how that feels. Because that's what the Ethiopian Hebrews did. The people that brought me into Orthodoxy, that's what they did. It's not all Hebrews that need to continue with this, slaughterhouse rave. We've We've been put into a false binary for a very long time, and like when you get put into this this mentality of like, okay, well, we're operating on the European binary, which is what it's always racialized. No, it's not. We I'm laughing just because it's that flipping that Christ did in the resurrection, to just suddenly leave the tomb, you know, amidst this incredible grief around him. The whole nation's just mourning, denying him, forgetting the Romans are doing what the Romans are doing. Disciples have gone into hiding. You know, it's like the darkest day of the history of the entire nation, and then he just walks out of the tomb. that is the gospel. That's what the apostles were trying to tell everybody. He just walked out. It's okay. We don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah, he did just walk away.
He just walked away from death. Isn't that magnificent? It's really beautiful. The dance floor is that's a thing that keeps people from the joy of just of meditating on the idea of our God becoming man, and then he's crucified and he just walks out. He walks out on death. It's a beautiful thing to meditate on. So yeah, I would like to leave my meditations on this point. The stone was rolled away. That was the sunrise set that we've been raving and waiting for centuries and millennia. Everyone's raving to get to sunrise, and that's the point where the women go into the garden to the tomb to anoint the body of the Messiah. It's just not there. Where is he?
Here. Amen. So we pray for everyone in the Holy Land.
Yeah.
They may, what is their prayer? The promises of Christ. I've got a fragment of a prayer in my head.
We should probably say that Our Father.
That's a good prayer. I just say it, Our Father. We say, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Through Jesus Christ our
Amen.
Lord. Thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, now and forever.
Thanks be to God. Good night, everyone.